Hi, I'm Josh.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Al. Now, we understand that every 3 seconds a new podcast is created, and now there's actually one podcast for every 3 people.
So we just wanted to take a minute to say thank you very much for downloading this one, and we hope you enjoy it.
In a nutshell, we realised that some of our film tastes weren't what you'd call conventional. So we decided to talk about them and hopefully shed some light on some films that either didn't get what we felt deserved at the time, or we just wanted to rewatch and talk about them.
You don't have to have seen the film, but if you haven't, you may want to just give it a quick Google.
What's the and that?
Enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to Just Films and That, a podcast where we discuss films that we think are underrated, underappreciated, or we just want to talk about them. I'm here with Al Collins.
Hello.
And Adam Ward.
Yep.
Gentlemen, how are we both? Al, come to you first.
I'm very well, thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah,
More importantly.
Good. Yeah, I'm good. We're recording this quite late, so I'm a bit tired.
We are, yeah. Eyes are being rubbed.
I'm not one to moan. Not one to moan. Someone had stuff to do today, so we had to do it late.
Some would call him selfish.
Yes, let's call him, I don't know, A. Bollins.
No, that's too obvious.
Al B.
I like it.
Yes.
Adam, how are you?
Yeah, good. Not bad.
Excellent.
Living.
So I'll cut right to it. We've been hoping to do a couple of special episodes, haven't we, in between series and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And we've got a cracker today, haven't we, chaps?
Mm-hmm.
It's Katy Brand. Katy's a comedian and an actress and a writer, novelist. She's done it all. And she's got a book coming out, which is essentially, it's about, well, you'll hear in the interview, but it's her life as a memoir, told through the eyes of the film Dirty Dancing, of which she is a massive, massive fan of. So without further ado, here's the interview. We're joined by a very special guest today, aren't we, chaps? We're joined by Katy Brand. Katy, thanks very much for coming in. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well. I'm very excited by all this.
Yes, it is. It's great to see you. So we always start the podcast with a completely random question, nothing to do with films.
Okay.
So I'll pass it to Al first, so you get the gist. Al, what's your favourite form of potato and its use?
Controversially, mashed potato.
Okay.
Is that controversial?
Not controversially. I'm going to go with mashed potato.
Mashed potato, that's a good shout.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Adam?
See, I was leaning towards mash. I'm probably going to say a roast. Roast potato. Big on roast.
Very good. Katy, what about you?
Well, I mean, I like potato in all forms.
Obviously.
But I'm going to go for, as a special treat, because you've all come down to record this, and I think it feels like a special treat kind of answer. I'm not saying this is an everyday thing, but I would go as a special treat, dauphinoise.
That's a classic.
Wow. Now we're getting fancy.
Yeah. Lot of prep.
Yes.
Lot of prep.
It needs to be very thin slices.
All
so
garlic in the world.
Yes, and it's not to be undertaken lightly.
Yeah.
That's controversial.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I think that's controversial. It puts my mashed potato to shame anyway.
Well, yeah.
I'm just crisps. I'm boring. just crisps.
Just
Can't beat a
immediately
crisp.
leave.
Yeah.
What about crisp? Yeah.
So this week's film is it's a small film you might have heard of called Dirty Dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, spoilers for Dirty Dancing, but it has been out for 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
So, the reason we're talking about that is, Katy, you have a book coming out.
I do, yes.
About your love for the film Dirty Dancing and how it fits in with your life. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. Well, it's called I Carried a Watermelon. For anyone who has not ever seen the film or is completely unfamiliar with the film, that title will be probably quite baffling. But it has kind of entered mainstream use, I think, I Carried a Watermelon. It is the scene where Baby, the protagonist of the film, enters, well, it's the kind of what we call the inciting incident, isn't it? In that kind of slightly hack way of slicing up film scripts to work with a particular formula. So you have the inciting incident of the protagonist, where the protagonist does something that sort of kicks everything off. And what Baby does is she tries to get into the staff quarters because she can hear a party going on in the staff quarters. And so she offers to carry a watermelon from another member of staff to help him, and that's how she gets into the staff after party and meets Johnny Castle, and everything goes from there. So the book is called I Carried a Watermelon. And it is about Dirty Dancing and me, and it's sort of partly a memoir. It's partly an homage to Dirty Dancing, and I was obsessed with this film between the ages of 11 and 13. And I have been sort of, I mean, that is the white heat of my obsession, I would say, those 2 years. Yeah, the peak. Yes, exactly, yes. I wouldn't say, I haven't maintained that level since then.
I'm just going to leave right now.
Yeah. But it's sort of always been present, and I've always been a fan. The first 2 years, I mean, certainly the first time I saw it just absolutely blew my mind, and I had to go and have a long lie down, which is not a euphemism when you're 11, incidentally. I just genuinely had a long lie down and a long think looking at the ceiling, feeling all my feelings. I watched it every day for 3 months until it was confiscated. And then I found it and then continued to watch it secretly and replace it in the hiding place each time. Then I broke the VHS, and after that there was a long period where I had to just rely on my own memory and imagination. And then it kind of has waxed and waned through my life since then. And then when I was 40 this year, my husband said on the night of my 40th birthday, we didn't have plans that particular night. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I suddenly, out of the blue, actually, slightly surprised myself and said, I want to watch Dirty Dancing. And so we did. Obviously downloaded it on a streaming platform, which happened in sort of 30 seconds, which would have blown my 11-year-old mind. And I'd seen it. I've seen it many times, or several times since my kind of mad obsessive period, but I don't think I've ever really focused on it since then. And I watched it properly from start to finish with no distractions, no walking in and out, no kind of half watching it with someone else, no kind of coming onto it halfway through on telly sort of thing. I sat down and watched it. And again, I just thought, God, this really stands up, this film. It's a rite of passage film for teenage girls. There aren't very many of them. And I started to realise as well, you know, how it had informed my choices through life, my preferences, my worldview, my romantic preferences, all of this sort of thing. And I thought with it, about a week later, I pitched it as a book. And 24 hours after that, HQ, the publishers, had bought it, and then I had to write it, and I have now written it, and now it's out. So, it's a kind of it's a look at being a teenage girl, I think, to some extent. And there are other stories about me through my life, but a lot of it is, you know, that those teenage years and the rites of passage you have to go through the sort of prism of Dirty Dancing, really, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think what's really interesting is it's kind of like you say, it's like a part memoir, part love letter to Dirty Dancing. And that's not, I've never really seen someone do an autobiography / memoir through the prism of just loving something so much. And that's what really came through for me in the book was the way that you dissect the film in line with your own life. That's what I really, really enjoyed about it.
Thank you.
Something that is, well, we might as well get it on the table now. Before we started reading the book, I'd never seen the film.
I'd never seen the film either.
Yeah, I hadn't
seen the film.
Yeah.
So I started reading the book without having seen the film. I got about a chapter in and I thought, I think that would be better if I watched the film as well.
I'm ruining a lot of it.
I thought, so I watched the film having read about a chapter of the book, and maybe two, and then for me, it really made me enjoy the film more.
Really?
I was seeing the stuff in the film. I was like, no, I get it. I get the way you break down certain things, which we'll get onto. I don't know, what did you guys think?
No, I was the same. I think there was elements of the film that I looked a lot deeper at, and I think I got the meaning of more having read the book.
100%.
I think that I looked at the film on a much deeper level than I think I would have had I not been reading the book alongside it.
I think it's that thing, isn't it? It's emotional baggage that comes with a film can improve it. There are films that are not critically well received, but if you watch it at the right time in your life, not that Dirty Dancing wasn't well received, but for example, like I really like some of the kind of 90s Adam Sandler films, and they're not necessarily very well received, but I have fond memories of watching like Big Daddy and Happy Gilmore when I was about 10. And for me, that kind of emotional baggage, I think the passion that you have for the film really comes through in the book.
Although I'm just going to say right now that Dirty Dancing is a lot better than any film Adam Sandler made in the 1990s.
No, it is.
I just want to put that out there. Can we at least agree?
We were going to have Adam Sandler on next week. Sorry, Adam.
No, he's done some good stuff. He's a funny man.
In terms
I
of
get
depth,
it.
for sure, completely. There's a sort of skin layer, isn't it, with Adam Sandler?
I watched the film and I was like, I like that film. I can see why it's so popular. And then obviously I read the book afterwards, and there's so many things you mention in it. I'm going, oh yeah. oh my, the scene with Baby and her dad by
That was
the lake.
great.
yeah.
Absolutely
I
great.
don't think I gave it the appreciation at the time. I now want to watch the film again.
Yes,
Really?
absolutely.
I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, because I think the book makes you want to have a second look.
Yeah,
Sure.
Because there's things you do notice, things you go, well, I want to try and find that again.
I think, and that scene in particular, it really struck me actually, and I think I mentioned in the book that I didn't quite. I knew that scene was a powerful scene where Baby has this sort of reckoning with her father in the kind of final third of the film, where they both kind of, he realizes he's got to let her go, and she's growing up, and she realizes that he wasn't the hero she always thought he was, and all of those sorts of things, but. It was only when I watched one of the remakes where it's a terrible
Which
scene
one?
in the remake. The one with Nicole Scherzinger.
Oh, yeah, the TV one.
Where kind of weirdly, the father is some kind of frustrated song and dance man who has instead become a doctor as a kind of consolation prize.
The old entertainment to doctor.
Entertainment turned doctor.
I heard about the Harry Hill, which
Yeah.
is the other way. It's not that, is it?
But also the whole point of, Jake Houseman, the father, is that he's this kind of stoic doctor, a family man, a man who has worked possibly from nothing and can now provide an expensive holiday for his family and all of this sort of stuff. He's not a sort of guy that's going to burst into Mr. Bojangles at the drop of a hat. This whole world that the dancers is baffling to him.
Yeah.
And so to have this scene play out where he talks a lot in this scene, in the remake, and they have this kind of conversation, this very unconvincing conversation while he's kind of playing the piano a bit. And it was only that made me think, God, this is so different to the original scene in Dirty Dancing. And for many reasons, but there's something about this that's completely different and I can't quite get it. And I had this sudden moment, which I talk about in the book, where I realised that in the original scene, the father doesn't say anything.
I didn't pick up on that until I read the book.
Yeah, and I'd never done that either. And actually, I suddenly thought, oh my God, it's such a powerful, strong scene. And in my mind, it's a two-hander. But actually, now I think of it, I can't think of a word he says. And, Jerry Orbach, who plays Dr. Jake Houseman in the original film, is such an immense actor, a massively respected actor in the American theatre scene, all of this sort of stuff. And I went back, and I specifically went back to watch just that scene to double check that I was correct. And then I cross-referenced it with the script. And I just suddenly thought, God, it's basically a monologue, which is played as a two-hander because of the intensity of his response. And just things like that, just even I hadn't ever noticed that before. And I don't want to get too pretentious about this, although obviously me being a bit pretentious about Dirty Dancing is part of the reason why I'm sat here talking about this. But so in a way, I would love to get really pretentious about it.
Go for it.
But I do want to say at the outset that it is a commercial film. It is a romantic dance film, and it is a piece of fantastic entertainment. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with making something which is commercial and entertaining and pushes all your buttons. That's thrilling and exciting and sexy and honest and all of this sort of stuff that we expect from a commercial entertainment film. It's not a piece of art house cinema. I'm not trying to argue that, but I think there are layers and layers to it. In the same way that there are layers and layers to all kinds of films that are big commercial hits. It's just, I think, sometimes in the past, this is being rectified now by things like this very conversation, amongst other things, where things that teenage girls liked tend to be slightly dismissed, whereas things that teenage boys liked, so you have endless articles about the universal themes and the importance of this and the layers of this and all of that. And the same can be said of some, not all, but some big commercial hits which tended to be aimed more at teenage girls. And therefore teenage people. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in it about sex, about this notion of slut-shaming, about consent, about all of this sort of thing that I think bears some discussion, some scrutiny, and some sort of respect and some looking back at it to see what's really there. So I'm thrilled to hear that you watched it and started to feel that you saw some of those things as well.
Yeah. I think for me, it was when it really broke. What I really liked when it really shone the book was when you broke down the class and the gender politics and how all that worked. And I had never really considered that I'd not seen the film anyway, but when you start talking about Johnny and how it's about, he's got nothing if he's not dancing, and Baby being a sexually empowered woman, and Penny and her work ethic, I thought it was really great the way he took each character kind of when this is what they this is what they are, this is what they stand for. I mean, like you say, it's also a piece of entertainment, but it's really tightly done. It's really
Yes.
well-rounded.
Done,
Like it's an hour and 40, something like that.
It's so tight. And actually, when I watched it on my 40th, there was a moment where I said, I'm just going to pause it for a minute because I want to see how far in we are. And because she's got so much story in there already, everything's set up without feeling, there's a bit of expositional stuff, but it's not super clunky. And we stopped it because everything was set up, everything was ready to go, and it was on 37 minutes in, and so she's pretty much bang on a third of the way in. And you just think, I look at films now, I mean, there's several of my writer friends we have this kind of funny Facebook thing about how films needn't be more than 90 minutes now, and how, you know, that everything's 3 hours now. But I think, you know, there's some truth in that. There's a hell of a lot of story in there for an hour and a half. And it's so tight.
It's really, we kind of, when we are picking the films that we are going to review, we do avoid films that are over 2 hours. I mean, I don't mind long epic films, but sometimes I like just a nice tight story that really
it makes it easy
entertains
for
you.
when we're preparing for an episode, doesn't it? Because you think, this is 2.5 hours long, and I'm gonna
you've got to
to
fit
do.
it in, you've got to,
exactly.
And so it's so that the writing is really good. I'm really surprised she's not kind of gone on and done others. I mean, I know she's very much invested in the Dirty Dancing, and like you talk about in the book, the musical and the other stuff she's done. But I think she seems like she could go on and do lots more.
I think that thing with the class system is so interesting.
It's so
because
integral, isn't it?
when you think about sort of the holiday place of this,
The Catskills.
The Catskills. When you think of that, really, your dancers and dance instructors should be higher in the hierarchy than your waiters.
That's like their servants,
because
isn't
of their
it?
class system and them being from all these fancy colleges, and that's the way everyone's viewed. It's so interesting.
I only knew about the Catskills because have you seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon? It's a show about set in the 50s or 60s, and she's like a Jewish comedian who lives in like a rich part of New York, but that's where they go on holiday. So when they said they were going to the Catskills, I was like, oh, Mrs. Maisel.
Yes, it was known as a sort of resort area of mountain lodge hotels, posh for, broadly speaking, it was known for middle class, well-to-do Jewish families that would go and spend the summer there, and Eleanor Bergstein, you know, it is her life. She was from a Jewish family. Her father was a doctor. She did go to the Catskills and dance, and to some extent, I think what you're saying about her, you know, it's good writing, therefore why couldn't she write something else? Yes, it is good writing, but I think perhaps she is one of those writers who has, possibly one great story, and what a great story it is, and how brilliantly she's told it. But there was such deep passion and understanding for that, and it just some alchemy brought it all together somehow. But there's this notion of the class, and yes, that sense of that. There's a almost throwaway line, you blink and you miss it, where Johnny is talking. This is a later point where Baby sees her father and she pulls Johnny away in this kind of sudden movement that's bit involuntary, and he clocks it and realises she's embarrassed to be seen with him, or worried because she's been told not to see him. And he talks about how one of his family members, if it ever goes wrong for him with the dancing, he can go back and become a painter and a decorator, and they can get him into the union. And I don't think sometimes, especially as a sort of teenager, you don't quite clock that. It's actually only later in life, you know, and I'm 40, I've been in the business for nearly 20 years. You know, I'm from a middle class family. I have a safety net in the sense that I wouldn't ever be homeless, but I don't have some kind of huge trust fund that's going to fund me through bad, you know, it's sort of, and that sense of like, and actually I only think I really picked up on that line properly and emotionally responded to it when I watched it this year. That sense of, God almighty, Johnny Castle, this incredibly passionate, exciting, talented dancer, genuinely is fearful, for good reason, that if he messes this up somehow, which he is doing by being with Baby, he'll spend the rest of his life being a decorator. This will never happen for him again. This there's no going back to this.
That was something in the book that I really responded to from sort of being from a middle class background myself. That when you were saying about the people you know in the business who've had a working class background are the ones who've still kept working because they've got that work ethic, and I think that's such an interesting concept because of not having the safety net.
I think it's funny actually. We were talking about this on the journey down about that very point about middle class guilt and the work ethic and that kind of thing. And first of all, I was saying that for me, it really shone with it really came to the fore with Penny and the way he kind of says, Robbie says something like, "You've got to go slumming it," treating her like this object, and because she doesn't earn much, she's lower than him, and he can just do what he wants with her. So we started talking about the class system and where you think you sit in the class system. Yeah. And as much as the class system is it's quite archaic now, I guess, in the way that it's kind of based on.
I wish it was more archaic.
Yeah. But we were saying, what do you think the class system is? What class are you? And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is you'll never be homeless. And it's that thing of being middle class. It's that grey area, because you talk about the strong identity of the working and the strong identity of the upper, and the middle being like this pendulum. It's that I think it's that thing, isn't it, of only doing something because you want to, not because you have to. Not because you have to keep a roof over your head or food on the table.
It's that thing of privilege, really. Really. That's what it comes down to.
What about the film? Is it you think it makes it because it's so popular? I've spoken to so many people, men and women, and you talk about that in the book. It's so popular. I mean, I work with a mixture of both. We've got friends who are both genders, and it's so often a favourite. It's always so. What is it you make that you think makes it have stood the test of time, makes it such a strong film for a lot of people's kind of favourite film?
I think it's several reasons. I don't think there's just one reason. I think it adheres quite loyally to a satisfying story structure. I think that's the first thing. So it has a nice narrative pace. It moves along swiftly, and it resolves in a way that doesn't feel kind of predictable and awful, but is satisfying. So I think a human need for a good story, yes, you can say, oh, Barry Lyndon, or you can say, these are great art house pieces of cinema, and people will admire them and some people will love them and all of that sort of thing. But when you've just got a straightforwardly great story, well told, I think that is always going to appeal to a lot of people. Yeah. And I think humans are just programmed to respond to good stories well told. So that's the first thing.
I agree. Again, it doesn't have to be, not everything has to be an analogy for something or a political statement. You can just enjoy a film. So many people I guess there are the tried and tested formulas for films that people just enjoy. You do get stuff like, whatever your opinion of it is, a James Bond film, what you're going to get, and that's why I would say more people would say something like Dirty Dancing is their favourite film than, like you say, Barry Lyndon or like a Full Metal Jacket or something like that.
But I think there's certain story beats to hit, and I think I talk about this in the book about the romantic storylines of boy meets girl, they hate each other instantly, then over time they come to fall in love, and then there's the boy meets girl who fall in love instantly, and then they're separated and they have to find their way back to each other. And I say in the book as well that one of the reasons I think Pride and Prejudice is consistently named the best book is because it combines both the storylines. You've got both of them going on at once with the two main couples. And I think what's funny about Dirty Dancing is it has both those storylines going within the same couple. So when you move into the second section, the first one becomes the second one. So those are just big hitter storylines, those two. And if you can combine them in some clever way, you're not going to go far wrong. Also, the dancing is incredible.
That's great.
It is brilliant.
They are brilliant dances. They're brilliant. It's brilliant choreography, phenomenally performed. And I defy anyone not to enjoy those dances. The soundtrack is fantastic. Eleanor Bergstein was completely invested in the soundtrack. She brought along her old 45s to go with the pitch. She insisted on things. They had to specifically get rights to things that she insisted was in the script. She had scripted the soundtrack. And I think that's another big part of it. And I just think, but also I think on a more fundamental level, most people respond to a rite of passage story. Because we all have to go through the difficult process of growing up. And I think it's a shame that it's been categorised as a girls' film. Only because, not to devalue it because of that, but only because it somehow prevents young men from watching it, and all the genders in between. And actually, there's a lot to say just generally about the way men and women and everyone else relates to each other.
There's so many different sort of like things for different people to access in it. If you want to just enjoy a love story with dancing in, you can put it on.
Absolutely,
But then we were talking earlier about the class systems and things like that. The dancing in it, there's so much.
For me, that's any sort of good art. It's like whenever sort of if I'm writing for theatre, I like to have a message with whatever I'm writing. But then at the same time, I want sort of my dad or my nan to be able to go and watch that show and
not have
just
to worry about the
and just have a
message.
good time. The message there, if you want the message to be there, and if you just want to go and enjoy yourself, you can do that as well. And that's one of the things that's so great about this.
I think the good music can really make a film, and
Without a doubt. Well, it's like Cameron Crowe says, music says the things that we don't have to say.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that works so well, and that's so prevalent in all of his films.
So something you mentioned is how your enjoyment of the film has changed over the time that you've been alive, and your events in your life, and, you know, growing older, marriage, children, all that sort of stuff. How do you think you'll watch the film in 20 years?
If I'm still here in 20 years. If any of us are still here in 20 years.
In a flying car.
I'll have to remember it because the electrical apocalypse would have happened by then. I think it will be similar to how I watch it now, actually. I have to say. I think I'm growing into my kind of middle-aged appreciation of Dirty Dancing. And I say in the book a bit about, you know, particularly the character of Vivian Pressman, the sort of older woman, the bungalow bunny, as she's known, the kind of forlorn but still quite sort of active, you know, and sexually desired and desirable woman, but very lonely and abandoned by her rich husband, who really has very little interest in her, and so she's sort of paying Johnny for ostensibly for extra dance lessons, but I think we all know what that means. And very much becoming Vivian Pressman, I think. I feel like this is headed somewhere odd. I see myself as paying a young hot dancer for extra dance lessons. No, I think it's been interesting the way those middle-aged characters have sort of come into focus for me, I think. And I think, again, that scene with Baby and her father that we were talking about earlier, that when I went to visit the hotel where a lot of it was filmed, where all of the Kellerman stuff is filmed, and I looked over across the grounds and I saw this gazebo, and I knew that was where it filmed. I recognised it instantly, and I walked into it, and there was I'm not really one for oogly boogly stuff, but there was an energy in that gazebo, and I stood in it.
Oogly boogly.
Yeah, I stood in it for about 10 minutes, and I just couldn't. I mean, you know, I don't know why, but I it's obviously the psychological impact of that scene. But I think as well, you know, having raised a teenager and I've got a young son, I think feeling the impact of her words on her father, you know, having only really watched them from her perspective as the kind of teenager that's growing up and wants to break free and be her own person and reject some of her father's values and make some of her own. It's very easy to see it from that point of view. And then you sort of get to 40 and up, and you've sort of maybe raised a couple of kids or you're still doing so, and you suddenly go, whoa, blimey, I think I'd be quiet too, you know. You know, I can see why he doesn't say anything. And also, you know, like I say, Vivian Pressman, the older woman, the bungalow bunny, just sort of feeling her pain. You know, it's so easy to watch it as a kind of 13-year-old girl and go, oh God, what a sad old woman. How tragic going around. But there's the pathos in her, especially in the scene where she wakes up the morning after having had a one-night stand with Robbie the waiter because she can't have Johnny, and then she glimpses Love's young dream across the way and sees the two, Baby and Johnny, kissing, and she has no makeup on. She looks a little bit sort of the worse for wear in the morning. You know, she's putting her tights in her bag. I mean, you just think, bloody hell. I've either been there or nearly been there, and you just think this is bleak. Like, you know, and I think I felt the impact of those scenes emotionally, and whereas before I'd just sort of gone, whatever, fine, let's get to the next bit with Johnny and Baby. What's Baby gonna do?
It's like the moment when he turns down the dance lessons with her, and you view it so much as a victory. When you look at it from her point of view, it's so sort of tragic.
It's like we were saying with Penny and Robbie, he treats her like an object. He's just like, oh, I'm playing cards. Can you take my wife for dance lessons? Really, it's like, I don't care. It's very so
I've not seen her
so
for
isolated.
the past week or two, but I've got a card game to play.
And he knows. The thing is he knows full well what's happening with Johnny as well, and he doesn't care. So the impact, and obviously, of course, the thing of the termination of the unwanted pregnancy and the abortion storyline, which was probably my first introduction to even the concept of an abortion when I first saw it. when I was 11. And I didn't really understand. I mean, that's probably the starkest difference, is that I didn't actually fundamentally understand what was happening when I was 11. I didn't know what knocked up meant. Nobody ever says pregnant in the film.
No.
In fact, in the remake, they do. It's probably the only benefit, but even then I'd hesitate.
It sounds like I've not seen the remake. It sounds
Don't watch the remake.
Completely lacks in subtlety. It's like,
Yes.
And then I read about Dirty Dancing 2 as well, and I thought before I should even tell you this, but before I read the book, I thought this will be hilarious. I'll buy Dirty Dancing 2 and I'll take it to the interview and I'll give it to her and be like, oh, maybe if you could write about this. And then I got to the chapter and I was like, that's going back.
Okay.
That's going back. That's going back.
Where's the receipt?
I was like, people are going to come in and look at my DVD collection. There's some good What? Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights with the guy from Star Wars Rogue One in it. What are you doing with that? So I suppose that we'll get on to the film now, but the last question I've got is, after the process of kind of researching and writing the book, and I think I know the answer, do you still enjoy the film?
Oh, yes,
Have you watched it loads whilst you've been writing it?
I haven't watched it, sort of sat down and watched it start to finish since, but although I started writing the book quite soon after my 40th, so I had sort of recently just sat down and watched it straight through for enjoyment quite recently at that point, but I had it on hand all the time, so I would kind of often when I was writing it, I'd go and check something, the colour of a leotard or whatever. And then inevitably, I'd fast forward it to that scene, and then inevitably just end up watching the rest of it. So I had to just buy a script in the end, just to be disciplined,
just to reference it and stuff.
Yeah, but no, I haven't watched it all the way through yet. I'm going to save that, I think, as a little celebratory thing after the book comes out. But when I went to Kellerman's, when I went to the hotel for their Dirty Dancing themed weekend, my little pilgrimage, it was such a great time actually, and I really enjoyed it, and it was nuts, the whole thing. And funnily enough, actually, a lot of the waitresses, were based at Virginia Tech University just down the road. So they're about 20, so so younger than you still. And one of the guys at my table that I sort of joined in with this gang of guys and women who were Florida firefighters there for the Dirty Dancing weekend. But one of these guys who was about sort of 40s, 50, kept saying to the waitresses, "So, where's the after show party? Where's the after show party? We're going to go to where's the staff after party?" And this girl just kept going, "Well, we don't really have them. I mean, we've got we sometimes have student parties, but it's a bit of a drive away." And the penny dropped, and I suddenly said, "Have you seen the film?" And they were all like, "No," and none of them had, and they were all in their 20s, and I just thought that was very sad. And actually, I asked one of them, I said, "But you know, it's a rite of passage film for girls, and there aren't many of those around, and what would be your rite of passage film then?" And she actually said Harry Potter, which I thought was quite interesting as well. I mean,
I can see why that.
Yeah, I can too.
Yeah,
so generationally, I would still like them to watch Dirty Dancing, but on the last day, you get breakfast, and they show Dirty Dancing whilst you're all having your breakfast. And this girl was there, and I sort of said, "Well, you're sort of watching it now, just pause in taking your eggs to the thing and just look at it for a minute, 'cause this is quite a good scene." And every time I've actually encountered the film or had to look at something for research or anything, or look at a clip, I've just felt this very warm, comforting, happy feeling. So it hasn't made it tired for me at all. It's made it actually a real sort of comforting place of home, I think. In a funny sort of way.
I get that.
Yeah. That really does come through in the book, to be honest. I've never heard anyone talk with such passion about
a
film. I've argued with friends drunkenly over whether something is good and who's the best Batman, but I've never been no, this is the best film.
Well, when I started writing the book, I did have a moment of panic where I thought, is there enough in this film to sustain a whole book? I mean, I've sold this book on a kind of very passionate, excited pitch. It's a proposal, but I haven't written the book yet. Is it actually possible? Have I suggested something that I can't deliver? Am I seeing something that isn't there? And actually, I was amazed and surprised and happy that I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and I just didn't stop writing. It never felt like, oh, I'm really padding this out here, or I'm really having to stretch for this. It just kept coming.
Like the film.
That's really how it reads. It reads.
It does, absolutely.
So there's so much depth in everything you write.
Not to get all oogly boogly about it.
Which is it, Al? Oogly or boogly?
It's a bit of both. Right?
It's usually a bit of both. You can't have an oogle without a boogle.
Absolutely not. No, but you can feel that passion come through, and that, like I say, I'd seen the film once, and yet I was you can just really feel what you're thinking, saying, and feeling through the things, and how it intertwines with your life as well. It's
Thank you.
It's an amazing
Absolutely.
read.
I really
it
appreciate
really
it.
is.
I flew through it.
Yeah, I did as well.
I
For a film I've seen once.
None of us had seen the film going into it, so there was things, and it's kind of become a running thing on the podcast. I get an idea of what a film is, and I watch it and go, "That's not."
Yeah.
We watched Starship Troopers, and I was going, thought it was a parody. You watched Warrior, which is a film with Tom Hardy
Thought it was a
about
war film.
cage fighting. Thought it was a war film.
It was a war film.
The Good Girl, Jennifer Aniston. Thought it was a chick flick.
Yeah.
It's not.
Very much not.
Yeah,
Very much not. Yeah.
And do you know, it's because I was getting mixed up with another Jennifer Aniston film.
Yeah.
All the
So-
other Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
films, I imagine.
So going into it, there's a few things I had no idea about. I thought it was a nice film. I did associate it with a kind of, like you say, with women. But I thought it was a nice film. A girl who meets a dance instructor, they fall in love, and that was it. No idea it was set in the 60s. Absolutely not. I thought it was set in the 80s.
Well, you could be forgiven for that because a lot of the clothing and musical tastes of some of the characters are
That's
somewhat
it,
yeah.
80s.
But I
so-
think that's where the soundtrack again is really strong, because you've got stuff like the Commodores and Otis Redding, and then you've got Patrick Swayze himself and the famous one. Obviously, I've had the time of my life, which is really comes through. And I also didn't realise how both adult, dark, and kind of sexy it would be. I didn't know it as soon as I opened the book. And what made me go, I need to watch the film before I read this, was when you start talking about the abortion.
Yes.
And I was like, I didn't have a clue. I did not have a clue about that. So what did Adam...
Some people actually have seen the film and have forgotten that there's an abortion in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is quite interesting to me and also quite cool, I think, like I say in the book. I think it's such a big issue, obviously, and still is. But abortion campaigners call this film the gold standard for pro-life campaigners.
I totally see why.
Because one of the main reasons is she recovers and can have children in the future if she wants to, and her life is not going to be over or ruined. She doesn't die on the table or bleed to death or any of those things. So yes, it's presented as something unpleasant and difficult, but she will recover and nobody judges her in it. Everyone can understand why this is the responsible course of action to take, all of that sort of thing. And it's very, I mean, she nearly lost the deal, as you know, if you've read the book. Because she was asked to take the abortion out and she said no. And she said this sort of thing about how if you want to put something in a film and not have it removed, you need to embed it so strongly in the storyline that it can't be removed without ruining the film, which I think was quite an interesting point. But yes, I think a lot of people don't know that there is this abortion in it, but it's absolutely pivotal.
Well, yeah, it's like the artistic integrity of the film. Like that's
She
such
fought
a
for it,
huge,
didn't she?
that's a
And
huge
that-
thing
and that really
because
shows.
it would be an entirely different film without that storyline because it brings so many
Baby wouldn't
characters
even meet
together.
Johnny.
Well, yeah, exactly.
nothing.
And then they
brings-
carry on dancing,
it
and then
brings
she
all
goes
the
home,
characters
and that's it.
together.
It'd be a lovely film about family going on holiday.
Someday she tries more wigs on.
Strengthening their familial bonds.
The Hungry Eyes scene, something I noticed is, and you talk about this in the book, which is her kind of as her sexual confidence and self-confidence grows, her costume changes. And there's times when she's wearing clothes that looked like what people wear now.
She's so well dressed.
She's very well put together.
I watched it
and
with my
it's-
girlfriend and we were just going, could wear that today.
Oh, yeah, without a
It's
doubt.
like, have you ever
brilliant
seen the
there.
picture of Harrison Ford from the late 70s? He looks like what every man wants to
Yeah.
look like now.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's that kind of thing of it's timeless in a way.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't matter that it's set in the 60s, apart from maybe that heightens the abortion storyline. Maybe.
I mean, I'm more or less dressed like Johnny does right now. To
You
be
are.
honest.
You
Yeah.
are this figure.
Yeah, I
You-
didn't, that was not that
You
was not
lifted me
purposely
above your
done.
head only yesterday.
You can tell from these arms. You just know.
So, what, Adam? What did you think it was going to be going into?
Well,
it?
yeah, I think because it was always one of my mum's favorite films. My dad always liked it, and my girlfriend and my sister both. All of them loved it, and all I really knew was kind of the memorable lines, like "No Put's Baby in the Corner" and that closing scene. But other than that, I didn't really know a great deal about the film, and it had so much. Like I've said this word so many times, but it had so much more depth to it than I was expecting. I think that relationship between Baby and Johnny, and the big thing for me is just Baby as a character. She's such an interesting character,
She's
particularly
very well written.
for the 60s, but even for an 80s lead. She's so well written. There's so many layers to that character.
She's very real, isn't
and
she?
she's so strong.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the ways in which some cinema has gone backwards since the 80s.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I think some people feel that the 80s and 90s was a real good time for female leads and female parts, and written in this way. And she's so active, and she makes everything happen. I mean, she's an ultimate active protagonist, and I think that's what a lot of women see in it, that slightly doesn't bypass the men, because the men can appreciate it too. But I think that is probably when you say, oh, my mum loved it, my girlfriend, my sisters, my female friends, and I never quite got it. It's like, well, because until you watch it through those, or just through a slightly different set of eyes, whoever they may belong to, that you're seeing now a 17-year-old girl who isn't trying to be weak or sort of coquettish or teasing. She's just straight down the line, and she's going to make some shit happen. She's going to take some opportunities. She's fearless. She'll try something new. She'll help someone in trouble. She's an ultimate hero, really, protagonist, active person.
Absolutely.
And I think there aren't many films that have a woman in that position in the film. They may have moments. Often the woman comes through at the end to make the key thing that saves the man, or whatever it is, and has that moment of truth and says it as it is. And then, but to just have that relentless drive that she's got to just make stuff happen, it's very exciting to watch. And I think a friend of mine said as well about her losing her virginity that, it's so often presented to teenage girls that it's going to be traumatic, it's going to be painful, it's going to be unpleasant. Don't expect any good sex for a good 5 to 10 years. Don't do it at this time, don't do it at that time. She doesn't lose her virginity, she sort of sheds it. She kind of...
Great,
It's
never even says she's a virgin, does it? It's just like, bang, I like this guy, I'm going to have sex with him, and that's it.
And he likes me, and we're going to have sex, and then we're going to have some more sex. I mean, they're at it for the whole holiday. So I think these things are going to speak to the, I don't want to just say women, but it's going to, that sort of response to that, perhaps, unless you're feeling it or relating to it directly, you might miss it the first few times. I think.
But it was like the moment when she has to tell her dad in front of everyone at breakfast. Just to have the courage to do that, especially with the relationship that her and her father have, it was such a big thing to do. Yeah,
I think it's very much carried as well. One thing I was not surprised about, that sounds like I was going and expecting to dislike it. I absolutely wasn't. I like to go into everything with an open mind, and we kind of have a rule that we don't talk about the film until we record, to try and keep it fresh. But I was expecting it to be slightly kind of more cheesy than it was.
Me too, 100%.
And that's not a bad thing. I went to watch, this is a kind of side note, I went to watch the Take That musical, because I like Take That, unashamedly. And I went with my mum and a couple of other people, and my partner and everything, and we came out of it, and someone said to me, what did you think of it? I said, yeah, it was good, it was cheesy. And she went, oh. I went, no, I said, that's good. That's what I went in for. I went in for some cheese. I love cheese. I love a cheese board.
Yeah, you do love a cheese board.
I love a cheese board.
Yeah.
I love a cheese board. You know that. We had the meals conversation last night. But it's very much carried on the performances. And I think that the key is to play it straight. And I think Jennifer Grey is excellent in it, and Patrick Swayze's excellent in it. Patrick Swayze plays that, and you talk about this again in the book, the masculine but sexy but dancing man so well. I mean, I'd not seen much about Patrick Swayze. The most I knew about Patrick Swayze, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to tell this story, so hopefully he's not listening, but is that my dad went to see Ghost on his own, and we've ripped him about it for 15 years because everyone was going to see it. He didn't have a partner at the time. And I'm just going to watch it, see what it's all about. He must have been sitting in the cinema just with couples everywhere, just like, look at that pottery scene though. Look at that, the Unchained Melody, great story. But I thought Patrick Swayze was excellent in it. I mean, how he looked like that while smoking a bajillion cigarettes a day, I have no idea, but he is... he's a
hunk, isn't he?
He's a man,
absolute hunk.
He's classic. He's up there, isn't he? I was when he passed away, which is very sad. It was actually our Freshers Week, because we all went to university together, and I was in a bar in Liverpool called Pop World, and everyone was dancing, and the music just went off, and I was fire alarm, and the DJ just went, just let everybody know. Patrick Swayze has passed away, and it went, beautiful. And my friend who I just met ran out crying because he liked Patrick Swayze. So that's a testament to kind of how loved the man was. I guess.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
everyone who's ever encountered him has told me that he was just the most delightful, kind,
you
gentleman.
mentioned that in the book as well, don't you? How behind the scenes he was
Yeah.
He's talking to the crew
friend
and
of
people who worked
everyone
in the
and-
hotel.
Yeah.
You speak to the guy, don't you, who still manages the hotel, who was there at the time, and he
Yeah.
said he would have a beer with him at the end of the day, or he's bum a cigarette off people.
Yeah, and I think,
one of
I
his
think
many
there was
cigarettes.
that element, yes, unfortunately, that element of Johnny and him of feeling like that line, that sort of pivotal line where he says, I'm bouncing on shit and any minute I could be back down there again. I think Patrick Swayze felt that about his own life. I think he could
Absolutely.
entirely
Yeah,
relate to it.
Yeah.
And it was just a part
Absolutely.
he was born to play, really.
Well, yeah, the fact that he was 35 when he got that part, and that was
Yeah.
the part that really set him on his way.
Yeah.
But
It must have
how
made him
many
a
years will he have been
megastar,
wasn't
as
it?
a dancer
Yeah.
leading up to that, getting that
Yeah,
role?
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
he
then
will have looked at that as his last chance for sure.
Yeah.
Jennifer Grey is obviously excellent in it. I think it's a shame she hasn't done more.
Yeah.
I couldn't find much about kind of her career. I know she's had her kind of issues with things like plastic surgery. I know that's been in the papers.
Yeah, well, I think the difficulty is she's a very striking and unusual looking woman in Dirty Dancing, very beautiful, but unusually so. And I think there was some, certainly, when you look at Cynthia Rhodes, who plays Penny, who is the absolute archetypal
Glamorous
kind of
and-
80s
Yeah.
babe.
Yeah.
It's very hard to play opposite somebody who looks like that if you feel a little bit uncertain about the way you look yourself, and then for the film to be so huge. So I don't know this for sure, but for whatever reason, Jennifer Grey went on to have some fairly extensive plastic surgery, which so wholly altered her face that as an actor, that sort of is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you make a name and a career for yourself, especially with a smash hit like this. We're looking a certain way, and you can alter yourself a bit, maybe have some things lifted and tightened. But if you literally look like a different person, that's not. I can't see how that's going to help your career.
Yeah.
So I think that was difficult. But I think from what I've learned and understood is that there's some trickiness anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know how she felt about it. I'm sure
No.
she can only be proud of it. But it's a mixed blessing, these kinds of roles, because
Yeah,
they define
that's
you.
it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
she's so perfect for it, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say. She's so perfect for it.
Well,
You
it's
in
like-
the milkshake advert.
Yeah, I've been in a milkshake.
I'll do-
I thought,
I'll do
yeah.
the
You're in the
milkshake
milkshake advert?
Yeah, it's no big
Fridge.
deal. But
Oh yeah, I know Fridge.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
you're the Fridge
I
guy.
was the face of the fridge for a while.
You
Yeah.
don't like to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
It's too. Yeah.
What is it? Just a bit raw?
I think the part took it out of you, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
drank
yeah.
a lot of milkshakes.
And you've had all that plastic surgery.
Yeah. I mean, I am the baby of the milkshake world. So
You should have
that's
you should
kind
have
of-
seen him prior to this.
Yeah.
Entirely different man.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you've never had a milkshake before.
No.
Yeah, really took it.
Went to rehab for a long old
I
time.
do think that Jennifer Grey is good in it, and like we've said before, the scene with her dad on the patio is she just smashes that out.
Oh,
She's
they both
really
do,
good.
yeah.
And I didn't. All the way through it was going Jerry Orbach. I know that name.
Yeah.
I know that name. And I was like, Law and Order. No, it's not that. It's not Law and Order. And after a bit, I went, Beauty and the Beast. Candlestick.
Lumiere.
It's the
Yeah,
candlestick of
Lumiere.
Beauty and the
I
Beast.
think
Yeah.
he's also in Crimes and Misdemeanors, isn't he? Is
not
that
sure. I'm
the
not
Woody
sure.
Allen film?
Oh, is it? I'm
Is
not
that-
sure, but he's. I mean, like you say, he has a massive distinguished career.
Yeah.
It's not just a
He's
candlestick.
not, but
Yeah.
he's more than a
It's
candlestick.
not one of
But
French candlestick.
I think he is it called Crimes and Misdemeanors? Oh, what is it? Anyway, there's a Woody Allen film that's very good that's excellent that he is in, and he's excellent in it.
All right. Well, maybe we could check that out because actually,
Not very specific.
we'll
He's
go
in
for his
a
IMDb
Woody
and find the
Allen
Woody
film.
Allen
Yeah,
film he
yeah,
did. So I
definitely.
suppose this is kind of a question for you guys more and myself is now that you've watched the film and read the book, what did you think of the film? We'll start with yourself, Adam.
Yeah, it was just such a joyous ending.
It really
I think
was,
that
wasn't it?
was the big thing with me going in. I that warming glow.
Yeah.
When I
It's
when
what
I
you want
came
from
out
a-
of
from a
that
film.
Yeah,
It's just what
exactly.
you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they say it's what you want from a romantic comedy, which is the reassurance that everything, that you know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
You just want to see it get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the quality of the journey to the end, but you will always feel safe that it's going to resolve in that way. And that is a sort of comfort. That's why people return to them.
Al, what about yourself?
When I finished the film, like I said earlier, I was like, yeah, okay, that was a nice film. I can see why that's popular. I suppose I enjoyed it on that. It's a film about dancing. It's brilliant. But even having said that, that scene where Baby first dances with Johnny,
My favourite scene.
it's so unbelievably done.
Yes,
It's and that is pure casting. That's pure because you've seen the the stage version, and you can't recreate that.
Nope.
You can try.
You can try. You
Um,
can't.
But and sorry to repeat myself, but having read the book, I really want to go home and watch it again now.
Oh, good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, without
I know what
question.
you mean.
And like I only saw it Wednesday,
Yeah,
and I want to go back
Oh,
and
wow,
watch
that's
it again.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's so great.
yeah.
That scene is phenomenal. And as you
It's
say,
really
the chemistry
clever.
and the way it's shot
Yeah.
and just the choreography and their performances. And I think it's such a key scene. If they had messed up that scene on any level, the rest of the film doesn't work. Because what you have to believe when they come together, when they just dance, is that at some point these two are going to have mind-blowing scenes.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just going to watch them get to that point.
It's even
basically.
like, if I remember rightly, is the lighting quite red?
Yes,
in that
it's sort
scene?
of pinkish.
Yeah, and I was like, even that's kind of that's really
Well,
All her
working
skin
here.
is sort of dewy and she becomes hot. I think the room itself in the filming would have been genuinely hot.
Yeah.
And that, and it's beautifully done. It's beautifully paced.
Pacing, lighting, everything
it's
about
the realness and the intensity
Yeah.
and the quickness of it.
Yeah.
It's just so
Sweaty,
short.
You can
that it's gone.
taste it. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
see it. You can.
Yeah, I like that
you can
about the
feel
dancers.
it.
You can see their sweat. The women's
Yeah.
mascara's running.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
The bit where they are literally dirty dancing as she walks through the party. It's crazy.
I like
Yeah.
to think of it as pheromone soup.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
Pheromone
it.
soup.
Yeah.
I mean, you
That's the
literally
title of this podcast.
we were almost going to
Throw it
change the
all
name
in.
to that.
Yep, pheromone soup.
I think for me, I really enjoyed it, and I did it. I must say, I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. I didn't go into it thinking I was not going to like it, but I didn't know it was going to be so. What I loved about it is it really didn't pander to its audience. It went, here's the story, here's the characters, it's sexy, it's there.
Yeah.
The messages in the film, it doesn't hammer you over the head with the abortion
Absolutely
storyline.
not.
It doesn't hammer you over the head with the class.
I
With the
feel like
class
you miss so
divide.
much on the first watch.
You do, and it's got great rewatch value, but it is that thing of it deals with issues in the way I think a lot of things should do. I think things these days have a tendency of picking a taboo subject, trying to shine a light on it and be like, look how woke we are. We're dealing with abortion, but we're gonna talk about it in the dialogue, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I much prefer show don't tell.
Yeah.
Which you say in the book.
Yeah.
Well, I think as
Yeah.
well, if you look for an absolute direct comparison in the context of this with what you're saying, is Dirty Dancing the original and Dirty Dancing the remake. Where they're literally telling they won't shut up like throughout the entire thing. I mean,
just lacks the subtlety.
Everything is talked about, everything is unpacked, everything is analysed. It's like, why use one word when you could use 10? It's endlessly debated and discussed. And it's sort of like, it's like they're doing their own analytical commentary of the original Dirty Dancing.
Yeah.
Which no one asked for.
No, it's like, I get it.
Nobody asked
you
for
can
that.
just show me and I'll make up my own, I'll
Yeah.
figure it out myself eventually. It's
It reminds me of what you're talking about there with the remake of it. Have you guys seen Life on Mars?
Life on Mars.
Life on
The TV show.
the TV
sorry,
show.
with,
I know
John
what it
Cena.
is.
Yeah, I
yes,
know what it
yes.
is.
So that was remade for American audiences. And in the English one, I won't tell you how it ends, but it's very subtle. It leaves it open. It's very well written. Where is he? Who knows? Then they go into it more in Ashes to Ashes. In the American one, he got cancelled and he woke up on a spaceship on the way to Mars, which sounds like I'm making that up. I'm not. He was literally
I want to
going
watch
live
that.
his life on Mars.
Awful.
And it just lacked in subtle. And it's just like, someone sat there and gone, yes, this.
Get him
Well,
to
it's-
Mars.
I think
Literally, the clues in the name.
Well, yeah,
Guys, it's been staring us in the face all along. It's literally called
I
Life
knew we
on
hired you
Mars.
for some reason. Get it filmed.
It's like, did you ever see the episodes of The American In-Betweeners?
Oh, unfortunately, yes, I saw one.
Terrible,
given that any
terrible.
time yet.
Because one of the things about Jay as a character is you kind of believe him, even though it's all bullshit. You kind of believe him, but the guy they got playing Jay in the American one, you just know it's all bullshit. You know
you're
something he's
supposed to feel
saying is
sorry
real.
for Jay because he I know this isn't the In-Betweeners podcast,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
that thing of he lies because he says no one pays attention to me, so I make stuff up.
Yeah.
In the American one, it's just like I'm just a dick.
Yeah, it's
Like,
just-
and
it's just obnoxious.
And this isn't. I'm not talking about the difference between American and English
No.
because Dirty Dancing 1 and Dirty Dancing the remake is both American, I presume. So I do know what you mean. So in terms of us discussing underrated films, what do you guys think? So I'll tell you now. It's sitting roughly about 7 out of 10. We don't really put numbers on stuff, but it's sitting at a 7 out of 10 on IMDb and about 71% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. So you're talking about that And then what I think really shows, from my point of view, is it's got 90% from the audience score.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. I think that's bang on. I
Yeah.
think that it's a film for audiences to just enjoy. And so I actually do think it's a little underrated. And I think back to something you were saying, Katie, is people just think it's a girls' film. And it's not. I don't think you can be so reductionist as to say male, female films.
No, I don't. And I also don't think girls' film, I know you didn't mean it like this, but girls' film is not intrinsically a devaluation. It's easy to end up sort of inadvertently thinking that, and a lot of the culture pushes things that way. So yes, it is a film with a female lead, and it is a lot about her concerns and her view of the world and all of that sort of stuff. But there is still a lot to say about that's important and sort of that's helpful and worthy and interesting and entertaining and exciting for anyone to watch. So not just girls don't just have to watch films about girls, and boys don't have to watch films about boys and or everyone in between. You know, we're all a mix of femininity, masculinity. We all have fears, insecurities, desires. You know, it's just that this is through the prism of a teenage girl. They're universal sort of themes.
I think I read a poem, or I saw a poem once, it might have done the rounds on social media, of a girl talking about teenage girls and how people are predisposed to dislike everything they like, and it's like they're constantly fighting a losing battle.
Well, a classic example, I think, I can't remember, it may have been Caitlin Moran, or it may have been Caitlin Moran retweeting it. I can't remember what the origin of this is, but a classic example of this is the Beatles, who are now adopted by kind of, sort of, not wishing to generalise too much, but a lot of my friends who are middle-aged white men who sort of claim the clever, intelligent, nice, sensitive men who claim the Beatles very much as their own and want to talk a lot about their importance. The people that started out loving the Beatles were teenage girls. The people who made the Beatles famous and an international phenomenon were teenage girls. So ignore them at your peril, because you know, teenage girls actually have pretty good taste a lot of the time.
So do you guys think it is, back to the kind of original question, do you think it is underrated? Do you think it's it's not, I think there's no argument that it's underseen. It isn't, but
I would go with underappreciated.
Yeah, it's a good shout. Yeah.
I think it's rated fairly. I think, you know, everyone loves it. Quite fairly. There's musicals, there's water bottles. So underappreciated, under sort of like seen,
undervalued.
People have a lot of assumptions, like we just said. People have a lot of assumptions about it.
I thought it was
I
Footloose.
think that's what it is.
I thought the
You
story.
did think it was Footloose.
I thought the storyline of Footloose was Dirty Dancing.
In this
So I
day
was
and age,
very
there'd be some
pleasantly
sort of
surprised.
shared universe where it's like the characters from Footloose all move to Dirty Dancing and then on to St Elmo's Fire.
But I'm going to go with undervalued
I know
and
the series we're
underappreciated.
writing next.
Adam, have you already answered this?
No, I'd agree with Al, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think undervalued, underappreciated because of the depth and the layered story. I think there's just so much to it that most people who haven't seen the film just aren't aware of it. Like Al said, I think people look at it as being a dancing film.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we're all agreed. Then it's underrated. Okay, just before we finish, have we got a present for you?
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh.
Not Dirty Dancing.
It was originally.
We got you some watermelon sweets.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't check the size before. I was
Wow.
They are a big
I
bag.
thought that's
Big old
a
bag.
small.
Can I, just for
small
the
stuff.
benefit of those listening, I have a bag of watermelon sweets the size of my head.
Yeah.
About the weight of my head. Thank you.
If a nuclear
That's
apocalypse
lovely.
happens now, we're good for a few months on those.
Thank you very much.
One final question I would have, Katie, if you're interested. We always talk about underrated films. Do you have one you'd like to nominate for us to talk about for another episode?
Well, I think it's on my mind just because of the genre and the time period. But I do think, for similar reasons that we've been discussing, I think Cocktail is an interesting one to have a look at.
Never seen that. So,
I have seen that.
oh, have you? Excellent. So we'll do an episode on Cocktail.
Yeah.
Katie, good luck with the book. When's it out? At the end of October?
10th of October.
10th of October, sorry.
October.
It's a fantastic book, and I hope it does very well. I'm sure it will. And thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a delight and a wonderful surprise. I'm glad that you've all suddenly enjoyed Dirty Dancing.
All because of you.
Thank you.
So there we go. That was our interview with Katy Brand. She was an absolute joy, wasn't she?
She was so down to
She was
earth.
lovely.
Yeah, she
A
was.
really
real
lovely.
delight.
And not to let anyone behind the curtain, but that's the first person we've interviewed,
Yeah.
and we were pretty nervous.
I felt nervous to begin with, and then very quickly settled
She walked
into
in
it.
and it was like she
Made
just-
it easy. The setup was very easy as well.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
The way
yeah.
we were sat.
I
and-
felt comfortable as hell, to be honest.
Oh,
I just
did you?
All right.
wish I had.
Schmoozing with celebrities.
Yeah, just
haven't we?
I could have done with saying more. I was more focused on looking cool.
Well, you did that.
So just to put a little bit more meat on the bone, Dirty Dancing, I think, as we said in the interview, none of us had seen it before.
Nope.
And we were kind of talking on the way back about why we hadn't seen it before, and there was no real reason other than we just hadn't. None of us are particularly like, I'm not watching that, it's a girl's film. None of us are what you call
It's a bit
manly men.
Speak for yourself, sir.
It was a bit of both for me. I'd never seen it just because I hadn't seen it, but also I didn't have any great desire to
No,
see it.
No.
So it wasn't, I don't want to watch it, I'm a bloke.
No.
Yeah.
But I was also
watch
like,
Jason Statham films.
Hobbs and Shaw. I just was, I was like, nah, I probably wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my
Yeah.
thinking.
I was the same. There was no particular reason. I just thought,
Yeah.
Mine was just I'd never come to it naturally. I guess I'm not like I like to go into most films with an open mind. It just had never come to me. I think as well because of the era of the film, it was made before we were born.
Yeah.
I think it's the sort of film whereas if you don't grow up with it, then you may not necessarily come to it naturally.
Yeah.
So like I'd never ever sit loads of my friends, and I'm sure you're the same. Love the Goonies, and the Goonies never came into me because it just wasn't a film that was in my house for
What
whatever
year
reason.
was the Goonies?
Like late 80s, I think.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where if your parents liked it or you have older brothers and sisters and they have it in the house, you watch it growing up.
yeah, without a doubt, because it's like I'd seen Ghost quite a lot growing up.
Yeah.
Because that was my mum was always big on Swayze. But so that was a film I watched a lot. But for some reason, Dirty Dancing was never one that really
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
came
but
up.
it's like one of those things. Every family's got their films, haven't they?
Yeah.
Every family has the film they watch at Christmas. Every family has the film that they're all constantly quoting to each other, or
Yeah.
the film that's in the DVD cabinet, video
Yeah.
cabinet, and that just wasn't one of mine, I suppose. But I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I was surprised how much I
Yeah,
enjoyed
me
it.
too.
Al, tell us more, like what you were surprised about it, or
The soundtrack for me was just we all know Time of Our Lives, whatever it's called,
the Green Day song.
the Green Day song. Yeah. But the soundtrack, Johnny, loved Johnny.
You've got a little
The-
checklist for Johnny. haven't you?
Johnny's first appearance is one of my favourite first appearances of any characters ever. He's called Johnny.
Just to give you an idea of how Al's head works
Yeah.
when we're prepping podcasts. Al,
Well, he's called Johnny for starters. He's wearing a leather jacket. He's wearing sunglasses. He's got what was the other thing? I don't have my notes on me.
leather jacket,
Leather jacket.
He doesn't make notes.
tight pants.
He doesn't make notes.
tight pants.
Tight pants, no rules, slicked back hair.
Yeah, he's in the pantheon of great Johnnies.
He is.
Depp, Castle,
Bravo.
Bravo, Mnemonic,
Johnny from The Room.
Johnny from the Room.
Johnny from the
Johnny
Room.
Surname.
Johnny, what is his surname?
I don't know.
Does he have a
The
surname?
Room.
Johnny the Room.
Johnny the Room.
Johnny the Room.
Other Johnnies. Johnny. It's cool to wear a Johnny.
Safety first.
Safety
Yeah.
first. Yeah. So you
No, I
like
really enjoyed it. Surprisingly so. I keep listening to Hungry Eyes as well. That's such a good song. It's always on in my work now.
Adam.
Hungry Eyes.
Adam,
Just
for those of
found
you who
that
don't
hilarious.
know, is kind of our resident music
Man.
guy, music man.
Yeah, I suppose.
Thoughts on Hungry Eyes? I mean, I wouldn't
No,
have
it's
picked
a
that as the
classic.
standout song.
Classic.
To be honest, no.
See, I love the film, but the soundtrack was one of my. Despite liking all the songs, the soundtrack was one of my issues with the film. I didn't mention it during the filming of
really?
this, but it was one of my issues. Just because
You're not a music.
the way I view it is the music is like setting your time and place so much, and the music kept going from like really 60s, this is where we are, this is the area we're in,
yeah, you're
to
right there.
now we're playing this incredibly 80s song, And like, there's 2 or 3 incredibly 80s songs, and the rest of the music is super 60s.
I massively agree with that. I was watching it going, wait a minute,
I was like,
wait. When is this set?
I'm invested.
confused
Yeah,
now.
exactly. I'd be like, I'm invested now. This is 60. This is really cool. And then it'd be like, hungry as
Yeah.
synth. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, wait, this is 80s music.
Wait, there's some echoed drums there.
Yeah.
So
I
do
love
you-
the music. I don't dislike the music in any way, but that was a tiny bugbear.
So your kind of issue is that you like the 60s music and the 80s
Yeah.
music, but the melding together didn't work.
yeah,
for you,
it doesn't
found
make
jarring.
it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
It's weird,
Especially with Swayze singing one of the songs himself.
Yeah.
that he wrote.
She's like the wind.
She's like the wind.
Yeah, but it's like,
It's weird that was never mentioned, like in post production or whatever. Like, why are we? Where is this set?
yeah.
What
You
year
know what
is
would have
this set?
improved the film for me is if Swayze was mouthing the lines in a cloud. She's like the wind.
See, for me, I like the soundtrack, and I saw the 80s thing as it's like showing progression
Yeah.
of like the then and the now. But I get what you mean
Yeah.
in
I
the
get what you
jarring.
mean.
It
I
went
agree
from
as
like
well.
Otis Redding to Eric Carmen,
Yeah.
and it was a bit jarring. It's a bit like when you see old 80s action films, and they go from the score to a synth.
Yeah,
Like Beverly Hills Cop or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand what you mean. What else? I mean, was that your only bugbear with the film, or
Really, yeah. Generally, I really liked it. And I know we already discussed it with Katie, but Baby as a character was so forward thinking, particularly for like the era it's supposed to be set in, the 60s, for it to be so headstrong was fantastic.
I think the big thing for me, and we mentioned this in the interview, that it worked really well alongside the book.
Yeah.
Because the book, I don't think I would have enjoyed it half as much if I hadn't read the book. And that's not to be like an arse kiss or anything like that. It's the way Katie talks about it, the way she really loves the film, makes you enjoy it more. You almost take on the baggage of what she's talking about and the analysis of what she's talking about. Like the scene with the father on the patio that we talked about. I would never have picked up that they were, that he never said anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So I do think that the book really improved it. If unfortunately, I can't really separate myself from the book and the film because they were so intertwined in preparation. But the film overall, I did really enjoy. I suppose all that's left to do really is say thanks very much to Katie, to the ladies at Harper Collins for sorting the interview out for us. Please do go and check out the book because it is a really, really good read. It's really easy reading.
It is.
It's really good, especially because it's such a popular film. So the book's out on October the 10th. But yeah, thanks very much, and cheerio from us. Hello, Josh here again. I just wanted to take another little minute to say thanks again for downloading the podcast. It really is greatly appreciated. If you do like it, then please like, subscribe, and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Special mentions go to Lee for the music, Luke for the logo, and Abby for producing, editing, and generally putting up with us. If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. Thanks once again, and see you next week. Cheerio.